Hey there, and welcome to another product update. I'm Eric, the IT guy Hendricks, and today we've got a live webinar, slide decks and all, and so I'm looking forward to talking about RHEL 9.4, and of course, we all just got back from Summit last week. If you're watching us live, so thank you all for joining us. With that said, let's dive on in. Go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So every 6 months or so, we have one of these product updates. It doesn't follow our usual live stream type format, but instead we'll go through some slides. I'll share some content. I know Scott McBrien and a couple of my colleagues are in chat, so feel free to ask any questions. But with that said, let's dive on in. If you're new to the channel, hi, I'm Eric, and I'm easy to find online. But if you're a frequent flyer here on the RHEL YouTube channel, good to see you. Thank you for joining us live or deferred. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about some technical features, both RHEL 9.4, 8.10, as well as some things that were announced at Summit. We've got some major offering updates, some timelines to talk about, and then plenty of links and additional content that you could use to learn more about RHEL and how to use it. So let's dive on in. Let's get to the good stuff. All right, so I went through and I picked about 5 things that I was most excited about when it uh, came to this current release. So 9.4 virtual machine snapshots have come to Web Console. If you have been around Brian Smith and myself at all, you know how important Ansible system roles are to Linux systems administrators. So there's 3 new system roles and a couple of enhanced system roles. Probably my top pick there is the bootloader system role. So probably the thing I fiddle with the most is the bootloader countdown clock, because sometimes 5 seconds seems like forever if you're running a virtual machine. But if you're trying to get to hardware and make some BIOS changes, sometimes 5 seconds just isn't long enough to get the keyboard going. So the bootloader system role helps you tweak some of that. Also, Podman 4.9 was released with RHEL 9.4. We'll talk about some features, as well as I'll point you back to an episode of RHEL Presents that we had recently, where we talked about Podman 4.9, as well as the forward-looking 5.0 and some things you can expect. Not brand new in this release, but bears mentioning is pre-conversion reports for Convert to RHEL. So what this means is before you do an in-place conversion from something like CentOS Linux or Rocky or Alma or one of the other RHEL-like systems, you can actually run a pre-conversion analysis, which will say, hey, these particular issues could break your upgrade or could break your conversion. And if you've run in-place upgrades with Leap, you're familiar with the pre-upgrade analysis. This is kind of the same thing, but for migrations versus upgrades. Also, we'll talk about this more at length here in a couple of slides, but image mode for RHEL. If you caught the keynotes at Summit, or if you were at Summit, we talked so much about image mode, and I've got a couple of slides to detail that here in a minute. But I'm really excited about image mode. It could really change the way that we develop and deploy operating systems. And as someone who's still an operating system, for someone who's still a systems administrator at heart, this is a huge new change, and I'm excited to see what happens. Not just with you all touching it and playing with it, but also to see what comes from engineering in the months to come. So those are some of my top picks. Also, some things to keep an eye out for. We are T minus about a year or so away from RHEL 10 already, if you can believe that. So there's some features in RHEL 9 that we're hoping to have GA'd for RHEL 10, if not a little bit before. So here's a couple of my top choices. WireGuard VPN. I am a Tailscale user here in my home lab, and a former OpenVPN administrator in some of my Linux days. So WireGuard built into the kernel, amazing way to increase throughput, decrease your risk profile. So that's in tech preview right now. GNOME for 64-bit ARM architecture. So I'm seeing more and more use cases for ARM hardware, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute as well. But seeing the ability to use a RHEL desktop on top of 64-bit ARM architecture, really excited there. Creating nested virtual machines. As someone who rebuilds their home lab on a frequent basis, I'm excited about this being in tech preview. Um, I'm not sure if I'd run it in production, but that's just a paranoid sysadmin. So one thing I will note about Tech Preview is this is sort of a feature beta. We don't encourage any of these features for production use, but try it, break it, see what happens. Send us some feedback. Tell us what you think about these features, or if there's something missing, or if you come across a bug. There's ways to report those things to Red Hat and Red Hat engineering to get included in future versions of RHEL. Deprecations. So these are things that there's a common misconception around deprecations. That doesn't mean that the feature is removed. That means it is scheduled for removal at some point. Like, I think Virt Manager there at the bottom of the list has been deprecated for probably a few years now. But what that means is Virt Manager is still supported for the full RHEL 9 lifecycle. So we're in year 2 of RHEL 9, which means there's 8 more years to go. So these things are not going away just mid-cycle. These are things that will most likely not show up in RHEL 10, but it varies a little bit. But if you have it running on your system, you don't have to worry too much, because it won't really manifest itself until the next major release. So a few examples are SHA-1. Hopefully no one is using SHA-1. Also, the SCP protocol. There's a little bit of confusion around this. The utility SCP is not going away. The underlying protocol is. There's some inherent vulnerabilities that just made it easier to move away from than try and fix. So the SCP command will still be available, but instead it will basically be a wrapper for SFTP. A few other things like cgroups v1, v2's been GA'd for a few releases now. I mentioned Virt Manager, a lot of virtual machine stuff today, so I'm excited about that. Now, if you're used to me following squirrels all over the live stream, you'll note that I don't have the chat up right now. Definitely put your questions in chat. If you're a deferred viewer, put your questions in the comments. Scott, Nate, and myself check the YouTube comments probably daily, if not every other day, looking for your feedback, looking for your questions. And that said, while we're working on PSAs, make sure to like this content. That helps us know what to produce more of. And if you're new to our channel, maybe your sales team mentioned that we were doing this webinar today, make sure to subscribe to our channel, because we've got a ton more content. We do live streams every week. We produce videos, tech tips, and that kind of thing on a regular basis. So make sure to subscribe and share with a friend. Now, I'm a little scatterbrained and a little tired today. Why? Because I just got back from Red Hat Summit. Summit 2024 was last week in Denver. I saw a bunch of you there, so it was great to meet a bunch of you in person for the first time. But in case you missed it, we had some big announcements, and I'll make sure to post links to the keynotes. But I pulled some highlights from last week's announcements. First off is image mode. I mentioned this in my top picks. Image mode for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Think of building an operating system using containerized methodologies, containerized tools. So image mode for RHEL uses what's called a bootc container, a bootable I guess it's not bootc container, uses bootc images, which stands for bootable containers. And so you take a full RHEL installation, not like UBI, not like a stripped down version of RHEL, but you take RHEL, basically RHEL minimal, and stick it into a container. And because it's got all the hardware drivers, because it's a full blown implementation of RHEL, it is a bootable container. So what this means is this is a different way of building out new systems. You can use image mode to deploy a bootable container, maybe on your local workstation, build it, run Ansible system roles against it, run configurations, install workloads, interact with it just like you would a container. But just like a container, instead of an operating system, because it is a container, you can actually deploy it to a container registry and then deploy to bare metal, virtual machines, cloud instances. Think of it as almost as image builder meets container workloads. And so if you've got an environment where you have a CI/CD pipeline. Now you can use bootc containers with image mode to deploy RPM OS tree based images through your CI/CD pipeline. That way, you know exactly the image that you're getting, and you can still run it bare metal or across the platform, or across any platform that you would normally deploy RHEL. This is early days, but it is so cool. I got to get my hands on this for the first time at Summit last week. There's just so many applications, um, so many different use cases, I should say, that image mode could impact. In fact, I had customers coming up to me asking questions, and they were suggesting use cases that I hadn't even considered, like using RPM OS tree to deploy like medical records stations throughout a hospital. So because it's RPM OS tree based, you can't just go in and make changes without deploying a brand new image. So you can't go in and mess with the underlying operating system on something like an EMR machine. So tons of ideas. Give this a shot, and stay tuned to this channel as we will have demos, tech tip videos, as well as some live streams around image mode. So one of those. Stay tuned as the story develops. Really excited to see where image mode goes. So everybody's got AI, even AIs now run AI. So everybody's got AI. People have tennis shoes with AI. So why not RHEL? So RHEL Lightspeed is in the concept phase. This is something we announced, but it's not been released as a feature yet or productized. But RHEL Lightspeed, the best way I can explain it is to pick up something that is out there. If you've used Ansible Lightspeed, it is a generative AI that ties into VS Code as a plugin. And so if you're writing Ansible playbooks using YAML, you can define, I need a lamp stack. And what Ansible Lightspeed will do is go in and write out your playbook. It'll install the packages, it'll set up the YAML code to install the packages, to open holes in the firewall. You basically tell it what you want and it'll fill it in. That's Ansible Lightspeed. So that's already out there. It's an amazing project. It really helps whether you're new to Ansible or whether you've written LAMP stack playbooks 1,000 times and you don't want to do it anymore. It's a great way to use AI to help augment your workflow. So why do I talk about Ansible Lightspeed in order to introduce RHEL Lightspeed? The goal is, much like Ansible Lightspeed makes it easier for veterans or newbies or anyone in between to write Ansible playbooks, RHEL Lightspeed's intent is to be able to make it easier to administer Linux boxes, whether you're a Windows admin who doesn't log into Linux machines very often. Maybe you just enjoy having a conversation with your operating system. Pirate speak, anybody? That may not end up in the product, but I think it'd be hilarious to administer your system and it respond to you in pirate speak. But just think about being able to ask it questions. What packages are available for update? What CVEs are currently impacted on the system? So RHEL Lightspeed currently in the planning stages. I imagine, this is just an educated guess, but I imagine we'll hear a lot more about this at Summit 2025, which, yes, is already in the planning stages. We're barely a week out, but RHEL Lightspeed, keep an eye out for this. I'm really excited to see how this develops and what types of functions, what types of skills get built into an AI that's running on top of Linux, particularly RHEL. So I mentioned bootc and RPM OS tree and image mode, and being able to build and define your RHEL golden image on your workstation. Well, how about taking it with you on your laptop? We've interviewed some of the engineers around Podman Desktop, and around Summit they announced Podman Desktop AI Lab, which basically means that you can run Podman Desktop on your Windows machine, your Linux box, or your Mac, and uh, get basically a Podman virtual machine, or basically a Linux virtual machine that's running Podman on top. Now, what if you're trying to get your hands on a generative AI? Maybe you're trying to learn what is the difference between a generative AI and some of the other, maybe it's machine learning. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to just spin up a Podman container and have an AI large language model right there ready to interact with? Well, now you can. Podman Desktop AI Lab means that you can build, test, and run generative AI powered applications. And if you were paying attention to Summit last week, IBM and Red Hat co announced Instruct Lab, which is an open source approach to a large language model. As well as some additional LLMs that are open source, and you'll be able to pick and choose which of those AI applications that you want to download and play with. Granted, does that mean you can run ChatGPT scale operations on your laptop? Probably not. But you can use the development process of a container to get the LLM that you want, tune it the way you want, start feeding it some information, and when it's ready, you can deploy that out to a container registry and then out to, say, your RHEL machines running either in the cloud or bare metal. So Podman Desktop AI Lab, really, really cool. Also intend on having the Podman Desktop folks back on RHEL Presents here in the near future to talk about this. We've got so much content. That's why it's been a little light the last month or so, is because we had to wait for Summit before we could start talking about some of these things. Something else I'm excited about is proactive guidance for image builder on Red Hat Insights. So if you're using the cloud-based image builder hosted on Insights at console.redhat.com, there is now proactive guidance. So what this means is that if you choose RHEL 8, you'll get a little notice, a little pop-up bubble that says, hey, just so you know, RHEL 8 is no longer in full support, or about 2 weeks from the date of recording, May 30th. RHEL 8 will no longer be in full support, but it'll be in its 5-year maintenance support cycle. So it'll just say, hey, guess what? RHEL 8 moving into maintenance mode. If you want new features, new hardware enablement, you might want to run RHEL 9, which is good for 8 years. So it'll give you a little pop-ups. And this too is early days, but just take that major version announcement and blow it up to supported packages to say that we noticed that you installed Nginx. Would you like a database to go with that? Or, hey, by the way, PHP XYZ is set to go end of life on a particular date. You might want to consider picking a newer package. So just guidance, just tips built into the UI. Check out Image Builder with major version support right now, and play around. And there's a little feedback button in the bottom right hand corner of the web page where you can give feedback, report bugs. So John Spinks, if you're out there and you watch this, there you go. I promoted the feedback button. But proactive guidance and the proactive assistant, which is kind of a generative AI chatbot experience that'll give you some of the same information, but across Insights as well. So we're plugging right along. Again, make sure to ask your questions in chat. I'll try and circle back to those. Thank you to Scott and team for answering those as we go through. If you haven't yet, make sure to hit that like button because we still got more content to cover. All right, so building day 0, day 1 operations. What's new? How about ARM64 and virtual machines? Those seem to be two common threads in this release. But ARM64, ARM support for virtualization is now generally available. If you are running, if you do want to run virtual machines on top of RHEL, it will have to be on 9.4 or newer. And you'll likely want 64K page sizes in your memory configuration. Again, this is also early days, so it's just 9.4, but all the features of running libvirt and KVM now on ARM system ready platforms only. So I wouldn't call it a certification, but ARM has a list of hardware that meets their requirements for say a system on a chip. Only those platforms are supported with RHEL. But RHEL virtualization now on ARM, so I'm excited about that. We talked a little bit during 9.3 about support for OVA images on VMware, Open Virtualization Archives. We also mentioned that AWS has hybrid boot configuration now, so you can use either UEFI or legacy BIOS boot modes. But as of 9.4, we now have FIPS support built in for RPM OS tree based edge images. So if you need to be FIPS compliant and you're using RHEL for the edge, you can now specify that in your image builder blueprints. All right, so let's move on to operations, day 2 and beyond. A lot of new features here, so I'm going to dive right in. I mentioned the pre-conversion assessment reports, but you can also register your CentOS Linux 7 only, CentOS Linux 7 systems with Red Hat Insights. Now, that doesn't give you the full suite of Insights tools. All that really does is opens up some Red Hat Insights. They're called actions. There's two of them. One is the ability to run the pre-conversion assessment at scale and running bulk conversions at scale as well. So if you've got CentOS Linux 7 systems, maybe you've got 100 of them, you can now register all 100 of them with Red Hat Insights, run that pre-conversion assessment, make any changes or make your backups. Please take backups of your systems, and then you can select those systems or batch those systems into groups to do bulk assessments and then bulk conversions on Red Hat Insights. Also, Red Hat Enterprise Linux has been using Leap for its in-place upgrades for the last several major releases from 7, 8, and 9, and we're planning on continuing Leap into RHEL 10. So if you're on RHEL 8 and you want some newer hardware or some newer drivers, you can use Leap to do in-place upgrades from 7 to 8 or 8 to 9, and take advantage of the lifecycle changes there. Uh, also would like to point out that the pre-upgrade assessment is available as part of an action on Red Hat Insights as well. So again, that was announced in 9.3, but worth repeating here for 9.4 as well, especially as 8.10 is now available. And actually, technically, I think the RPMs are being synced as we speak. So 8.10 should be available by the time you watch this recording. But definitely take a look at Leap in-place upgrades. System roles, Brian Smith, your ears are probably burning, but RHEL system roles are based on Ansible system roles, or the upstream Linux system roles, I should say. And we've got a few new ones. I mentioned bootloader already, LVM snapshotting, and the ability to configure FA policy D through a system role. So if you haven't used a system role, they are so easy to use. You just basically call the role that you're intending to use. Like, for example, here is the bootloader. I can configure that bootloader timeout, set a bootloader password. I can change kernel parameters, and then define which hosts that I want to target using an inventory file, and just run this playbook. So, I mean, we're looking at about a dozen lines of YAML code and one Ansible command, and I can configure the bootloader of every system in my entire enterprise. So, if you're someone who's got 10,000 or 15,000 systems, you need to be looking into system roles. We keep adding more every release. I think we're above like 20 some odd now. So check out the bootloader system role as well as all the others that are available out on RHEL. It wouldn't be a live stream from the RHEL YouTube channel if we didn't mention Web Console. Some new functionality, like I mentioned at the top of the episode. We've got support for external machine snapshots, including live snapshots in RHEL 9.4 and newer. WireGuard VPN configuration is in tech preview, but is available in the Web Console as well. And then some enhancements for doing deployments and cleanup for RPM OS tree RHEL for edge-based images. So always check out the RHEL Web Console. It's much better than running server with a GUI, Scott McBrien. RHEL wouldn't be RHEL without the ability to run something on top of it. I've been told that most people don't run an operating system just to run an operating system. You've got to have it do a job. And one of our premier partners out there is SAP. And so every release we add in some additional support for clustering. In this case, we added support for SAP HANA's index server crash restart functionality. As well as refreshed our online marketplace offers. So if you are, for instance, on AWS, you can actually deploy SAP on top of RHEL right from the marketplace. So a lot of that comes pre-configured, and then you can also use Ansible system roles to configure it. What I love about all these tools is you can start to kind of pile things on top of each other, build that layer cake, and make it so easy to configure and deploy RHEL, which makes it easier to maintain on day 2. Also, gotta give a hat tip to our partners over at Microsoft. They've got their latest version of SQL Server, which is 2022, is now supported on both RHEL 8 and 9, and there is a SQL Server installation system role. And now that system role has support for RHEL 9. So you can use a system role and install a production ready SQL Server instance on RHEL. I've seen it demoed a few times. Lewis Immershine has been on our show a few times, and I think the last time the actual deployment took less than about 2 minutes, and most of that was just downloading the installer. So if you're a Microsoft SQL Server user, definitely check out running that on top of RHEL. RHEL wouldn't be much to work with if we didn't have development tools, and a lot of them got a fresh coat of paint for this release. So in 9.4, we've got support for SQL 3.12, PostgreSQL 16, and a host of others, as well as improved BPF features. Scott, in the chat, if you could remind me what BPF stands for, it's Berkeley Packet Filter, I believe, but has a lot going for it in the performance monitoring tooling space. Also, Git and Git LFS have a new version. So a lot of new tools. You can actually go out to developers.redhat.com. They have and will be publishing blogs on each of these and some of the new features and why you might want the latest and greatest version of, say, Python or Ruby. All right, container tools. We already kind of mentioned Podman 4.9, but some of the major features in that are having these multi-command modules. So DNF made this change a while back to where, in this case, Podman is your main command. It's the utility that you invoke. And now there's sub-commands that we call modules. So you don't have to do like a podman dash install. Sorry, not install. You don't have to invoke separate commands. You can just use podman and then find that module that you're looking for, add in your options. Makes it a little bit cleaner to work with, a little bit easier to script and whatnot. Also worth mentioning, a SQLite is now replacing BoltDB as the underlying database for Podman. So any new installations that you use with Podman 4.9 or newer, you won't be getting BoltDB. It'll be SQLite instead. And in that episode of RHEL Presents that I mentioned, in Tech Preview is a multi-architecture build farm. So basically, you can build an image and deploy it for x86, 64, and then change a tag and deploy it for ARM. So you can build once and then deploy images out to your container registry from multiple architectures. That's in Tech Preview right now, hoping to see that drop into GA here before too long. Hopefully in the next release, if not the next two. But a lot going on in the Podman space. I'm definitely excited to see Podman 5 come to RHEL, whether that's in RHEL 10 or 9.5. I'm not sure yet, but Podman 5 has got some awesome features as well. So we announced this a while back, but we actually got to co-announce this at Summit. If you have a YubiKey, if you're a big fan of Yubico, we actually have support for verified passkey authentication on RHEL 9.4 and newer. So if it's a FIDO2 compliant key, you can plug it into your laptop or plug it into your server and log into your systems without having to without having to type your password. A lot of YubiKeys you plug in, you tap a little button on the side of the USB device, and it'll fill in your passkey. So imagine having to log in on an outage or maybe patch day and have 100 or 1,000 servers you have to log into. You don't have to type your password. So really excited. We've already got on the books an episode upcoming with Yubico to talk about YubiKey and identity management on RHEL. So really looking forward to that. I feel like this is just one big advertisement for our live streams, which if you haven't yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because we're going to shift gears away from the technical content and over to the product lifecycle. There's some important announcements and some important dates that you should be aware of. So we announced this on the Red Hat blog not too long ago, but starting with 9.5, so this next release, there will be no more beta program for minor releases. This is for minor releases only. We're currently in the planning stages of what the RHEL 10 deployment is going to look like, but this is we've only decided on the future of minor releases. And here's why. if you think about RHEL's development lifecycle, we start with Fedora, we go to CentOS Stream, and then we go to RHEL. RHEL deploys major versions every 3 years and minor versions every 6 months. And if we deploy a minor release, or if we deploy a beta, say 4 or 5 weeks ahead of GA, that gives you all time to kick the tires, to play with some of the new packaging, to find some bugs, to help us figure out what's missing, like a good open source development lifecycle should be. The problem is, if it's something that needs to be up leveled to CentOS Stream and then pulled back into RHEL, that process can take some time. Or if it's something that needs to be addressed in RHEL, in that RHEL minor release, it still may take longer to fix the bug or to patch the vulnerability than that 4 or 5 week window gives us. So this is our chance to try and make that relationship better, make the beta testing, the package testing process more organic, more less time bound and more open. Um, so there won't be a formal minor release beta moving forward, but there still will be beta repositories, and there still will be beta ISOs available as engineering builds those out. So you can still interact with the beta, but there won't be a formal program built around it. You just use the usual process: either open a Jira ticket with our engineering team, report to your account team, maybe your TAM. So that's minor releases only. Stay tuned for our plans for RHEL 10 beta. Um, we'll talk more about RHEL 10 here in just a minute. But here's some key lifecycle milestones. I feel like I've been preaching on this for a year, and it is upon us. I'm affectionately calling it Techmageddon 2024, because starting in 2 weeks on May 31st and through June 30th, there's going to be such a huge change to the enterprise Linux ecosystem. So probably the biggest date you need to know about is June 30th, with the end of life of CentOS Linux 7. That is the end of CentOS Linux itself. But instead, we're dependent upon CentOS Stream, and we'll talk about that here in a couple of slides. CentOS Stream 8, which was the first major version of Stream, will actually go end of build on May 31st. RHEL 6 has been in extended lifecycle support, so that's that paid add-on to try and get those last few systems converted to RHEL 7 or re-implemented or retired. ELS support will actually end on June 30th. And as RHEL 6 rides off into the sunset, you will be missed, because I think I'm not sure if it was RHEL 5 or RHEL 6 was the first brand new operating system I ever got to deploy in production. So it's kind of a bittersweet moment to see RHEL 6 riding off into the sunset. But RHEL 7 will actually be ending its maintenance phase and starting its ELS phase, which means to be in support, you'll need that ELS add-on. Talk to your account team about that. And then, as I've mentioned a couple of times, RHEL 8 is starting its maintenance phase, basically June 1st. And then, if you have new products, if you have new projects, if you have anything that you want to deploy that you don't want to have to think about for a few years, never fear, because RHEL 9 is still in full support until 2027. So we still have a few years before anything major changes with RHEL 9. So print this out, take a screenshot, whatever you have to do. Remember these dates: May 31st and June 30th. A lot of change in the ecosystem. So as I mentioned, RHEL 7 is going into ELS here in just a few weeks. RHEL 8 is going to be starting maintenance support. RHEL 9 going into full support. So just a quick glance at the life cycle in a more visual format. If you want these charts and some explanations as to what these different phases are, you can actually don't tell the Red Hat website team that I'm going to tell you this, but just go to your search engine and search for RHEL product lifecycle, and it'll take you to a full page that talks about the different programs: EUS, ELS, EEUS, what it means for full support versus maintenance support. All that information, as well as all the dates and more, are available just on the RHEL product lifecycle page. Again, just go to your search engine and search for product lifecycle RHEL. It's the easiest and quickest way I've ever found to find that page. I've worked for Red Hat for almost 5 years. Don't tell the website team. So once again, just kind of another look at we looked at the major versions. Now, kind of a snapshot of the minor versions. 8.10 will be the last minor release. Again, by the time you're watching this, probably will be available. We should be yeah, just stay tuned on the blog for press release on 8.10. It should be imminent. Plenty of time left on 9.4. You notice that we've about every other release is an EUS release, which means that you can stay on even numbered minor versions for up to two or 4 years. Um, all right, so RHEL 10. I've already been asked. Some people are shocked that we're already talking RHEL 10. Other people are like, come on, I want to get my hands on this. I cannot tell you after Summit just how excited I am about RHEL 10. I think it's going to be maybe not package wise a big change, but the way we implement it, the way we as in systems administrators, the way you deploy it, I think will be a lot different. But it'll still have a lot of the same great features that have really changed since RHEL 8, RHEL 9, and RHEL 10. So later on this year, expect CentOS Stream 10 to drop. And then late this year, there'll be some form of a beta program. Again, we're kind of we're looking back at our feedback from the RHEL 9 high touch beta and figuring out what lessons we learned. So stay tuned for news around the RHEL 10 beta, and then. Of course, we like a big stage to announce our major versions on. So 2025, somewhere mid-year, uh, maybe around Summit timeframe, we'll be looking at RHEL 10 GA. Again, these dates are subject to change. Don't quote me. Don't cite the slide. These are just expected timeframes based on RHEL 9. So it may change for RHEL 10, but it may not. So stay tuned. All right. Believe it or not, I'm actually right on time. I this never happens. So I just want to leave you with a few extra things. I've hinted at plenty of content on this channel. Every other Wednesday, Brian Smith and myself are live at 2 p.m. Eastern for RHEL Presents. And then Nate and Scott are live every Friday, just about every Friday, for Into the Terminal, where you can get your hands dirty in 30-ish minutes of content. But if you go to if you subscribe here on this video and click that bell, you'll get notified anytime we go live. We also publish like 7 to 8 minute tech tip videos that walk you through a specific task. There's other and we publish other content out here as well. Also, all of our content has pretty well-defined show notes. So usually, with an hour or two after a live stream, I get those updated with chapter markers, links to resources, and additional content that might be useful for you. So check back here often as we do try and keep those show notes up to date. Also, a lot of what I've talked about has a lab tied to it. So if you go to lab.redhat.com, you can play with different Podman functionality. There's image builder labs. There's some intro to development on RHEL labs. I forget how many we're up to, but it's a bunch, and they're of no cost to you. You've got the instructions on the right, you've got the terminal on the left, and about an hour to you got about an hour or so to run a demo or run a lab and learn something. We try to target about 10 to 15 minutes on these labs just because, hey, if I've got 15 minutes to eat some lunch, why not spend that time learning a new task? And if I'm being honest, sometimes I'll go and run these labs myself before I present on them, just so I remember how to do it. So lab.redhat.com. Also, if a lot of our YouTube audience tries to make as many episodes and events as possible. So if you are a Red Hat customer, check with your account team and you might be eligible to become a Red Hat Accelerator. This is our champion program. You get sneak peeks on content like this before GA. You get some swag. You get a chance to be in community with a bunch of other systems administrators and Red Hat customers. And it's not just for RHEL, it's for all of our tools. So go to red.ht/accelerators to learn more and talk to your account team about becoming an accelerator today. So this is 40 minutes of me rambling through new features and talking about all that's to come. So I really want to thank you for your time, because there's so many other things you could be doing instead of watching a talking head talk through a slide deck. So I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you being a part of this. But we do have about 20 minutes left, which which everyone tell manager Scott that I made it. I wanted to do about 40 minutes worth of content, and we are at 40 minutes. So I want to open this up to some Q&A. I think I've got a couple of my fellow technical marketers on standby, and they've been answering questions in chat. Let me pull up our doc here and see what we've got going on. So Imran asks about network IFCFG files. They are in fact deprecated in RHEL 9, so I wouldn't expect to see them coming forward, particularly around 10 or beyond. One thing I will say though is that gosh, I lost my train of thought. So the slide that I showed at the top of the presentation, the deprecation slide, those are only features that I felt were of interest to a broad audience. But if you go to the RHEL 9 release notes, there's like a full-on ebook. Go to the release notes, and you can hear more about. You can read more about what specifically is deprecated. Actually, let me tweak that answer just a little bit. They were deprecated in 8. A lot of that functionality has been removed in RHEL 9. So Shantanu asks about FIPS support and what version is supported. Checking with the back office, FIPS 140-3 has been submitted for validation. We're just waiting on them to get back to us. Those were some of the major questions. So I will be around for about another 18 minutes. So feel free to put your questions in chat. And I don't have my QR code handy, but if you go to red.ht/rel-discord, that will actually take you to a Discord server where we cross post all the YouTube chat, as well as building a community of tech support, job hunters, and whatnot. So definitely check out the Red Hat Discord channel. I'll make sure that the invite link is in the show notes. So another question comes in from Shantanu about tracking stream for RHEL miners instead of beta, a separate CS server on the side. I'm assuming that's CentOS Stream, where I install the app as my production machine to see if CS updates break anything. Then when time comes, I upgrade my main server to RHEL. So Shantanu, correct me if I misread that, but basically, yeah, that's a great way to stay ahead of the RHEL curve, because most of our features are deployed as part of CentOS Stream ahead of time. But that's not always a guarantee. Sometimes something will get fixed in RHEL and then we backport it into CentOS Stream. Other times something will get mentioned as part of CentOS Stream and will get added to RHEL in the next or in the next minor version. So CentOS Stream is a good, call it a weather gauge for RHEL, but I wouldn't say it would. I wouldn't say that CentOS Stream is a beta or a precursor for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. There's too many variables there. Scott McBrien actually helped save my bacon and put the Discord chat link in there. So if you want to join us, join red.ht/RHEL Discord. Nate's over there. I'm over there. I don't know. Manager Scott might be a little too old to use Discord. I think he's still using an abacus for a calculator. So he's not on video right now, so I can give him a hard time, which is fair because he gives me a hard time on Into the Terminal. Yeah, I like what our buddy Richard says in the chat, that it's kind of like weather forecasting, that it might rain, but there's no guarantee. So definitely hang out here for a couple more minutes. So if you have any last minute questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I am watching it now. So if you want to make fun of me, bring it on. But other than that, once again, make sure to like this content, share it with a friend. We intend on these to be very formal, very straightforward, unlike a lot of our live streams, which are more conversational. Of course, now I started a holy war in the chat about using IRC instead. I wonder if there's a Discord bridge for IRC. Anyway, make sure to like and subscribe to this content. RHEL Presents will be back 2 weeks, I believe. I'd have to double check the schedule, but stay tuned on this channel. We'll have RHEL Presents. Not sure on the topic yet because I've got a whole bunch of people lined up at the door to talk about image mode, Podman desktop, uh, YubiKeys. I mean, we've got half a dozen episodes planned and ready to go. So I'm really looking forward to that. I don't see any other questions in the chat. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Darth Fikes likes my shirt. Darth, I think you were at Summit, but yeah, I gave a presentation in the Red Hat developer booth and they gave me a shirt. So, but definitely thank you all very much for joining us, whether you're live or deferred. Make sure to add any additional questions in the comment section below. Let us know if you like this content or if there's a topic you'd like to see us cover. In the meantime, on behalf of Scott McBrien, Matthew Mycene, Matthew Yee, Nate Lager, Brian Smith, everybody else on the RHEL team, thank you very much for joining us. I've been Eric the IT Guy Hendricks, your host for today, and I look forward to seeing you all again real soon. Thank you.